There's a great writer of the 1960s named Franz Fanon, who was the person who was teaching us in that period about our world. And he said every generation must rise out of obscurity, find its historic mission, and either betray it or carry it out. In the sense of 1797, this generation, building on the work of the people who were settled here, understood the need for a human life, understood the need for peace, understood the need for prosperity. One night we were here in this village with Marcel Bowen, and the stars came down so low, we were with Roshi and his wife. And I told Marcel Bowen, I said the stars are so low that we could have much more touch them. I said, but they are innumerable. And he corrected me, he said, no, Bert, the God of love never makes anything that is innumerable. Everything is cared for, everything is counted. And he said, you don't know, but I know. Everyone has a name. And it meant that everything that was done was precious, and everything was to be preserved, and everything was to be enhanced, and everything had a purpose. And that night, we stood on the banks of this river here in 1995 and said, that must have been the night when these 14 heroic people departed downriver to Belize to take part in what was called a very rudimentary form of democracy, the public meeting, in which to say in the public meeting, this place is a place that should be preserved in perpetuity, and therefore stay, stand, and fight. Do what is right. And so in 1797, that generation understood their historic mission. Subsequent generations may have understood less or more at some time, and then sometimes in human history you catch up when you catch up. And even though you pay penalties for having missed, the God of love gives us a chance for redemption. And today we continue along that journey. I mentioned Marcel Bowen because he died 2 years before, or 4 years before Dr. Miller, with the same vision of love and respect to develop and encourage our people to move forward in an environment of humanity. And so that night when we were here in 1995, along with Roshi and the other folks, we called it La Ruta Humana. We said what was happening here in Florestan was in the midst of slavery, decolonization, and all the other evils that were associated and still continue to be associated. There were human beings driven by a light of betterment. And so they got on a boat and drove it and they went. And they voted not with guns and ammunition, but with their hearts and their spirits to bring a country into being that would respect those principles. And we said that those principles are really La Ruta Humana, the human root. And so we in our own misguided selves from 1995 have been calling this process La Ruta Humana. We are saying, folks, Honorable Governor House is here with us. As we talk about the sacrifices, I must take the opportunity, Mr. Gill said I'm a book walking, but he wants to shut me down, so I won't mention that. But I must mention some facts. Honorable Governor House took $22,000 out of his personal pocket within the dairy program and cleared land in this village here as part of a process to ensure that people would be able to grow rice and to get into the mode of production. That happened right in the program here, within our lifetime. And for most of us, it's, well, the bush grow back, so what? Let it go on. And for many of us, we dismissed it. It is my duty to recall it, and to recall it in the context of saying it's all part of the sacrifice of people moving forward and understanding that we're not doing this for somebody else, we're doing this for ourselves. And we had a program that we said, none but ourselves. Because we must change, none but ourselves, let's get going. And so, 2 or 3 other points I want to share with you. People like to talk about Belize 101. For us, Belize 101, there are many 101s. But we keep saying if you miss 101 and you miss 102 and you miss 103 and 104, it will be a miracle if you pass 105. So 101s are supposed to be the blessings that you take in order not to ask for miracles later on. 101 for us is 1797 to 1898, 101 years. In that 101 years, you have the heroic battle of St. George's Key, and you have the emergence of Simon Lamb in 1898, who is aware that the British colonial authorities, who are hypocritically wiping out the history at that time, from 1862, needed to be reminded that the peoples of this country fought and established it. It was not a colony, it was a settlement. And so from 1797 to 1898, 101, you have 101 years, that if we get it clear, we'll have a little bit better picture. 1898 is the birth of Samuel Alfred Haynes. Haynes goes to World War I and comes back 1919. 1919 to 2020 is 101 years. 101 years. 2020 is 8 years away. And I choose to draw your attention to 2020. They call it perfect vision in terms of optometrics. It's a time when you're supposed to be able to see clearly. But if we use the history seriously, we can see before we get to that spot. We have 8 years remaining to get to 2020. And this meeting this morning is not an accidental thing in which we say a few little words and we go and we dance and so on. It is to try and truly connect with our history and to take on the appropriate roles that that history indicates and to understand what is the historic mission at this time and to stop doing the superficial little Mickey Mouse dances and to become the true human beings that we have been destined to be in this kind of God-given setting that no part of the world can be. And so what we call this whole La Ruta Humana then is the people of this country and surrounding countries as we share coming into the historic rehumanizing process away from the dehumanization that has occurred. Because when we came here in 1993, the baboons were hanging off the tree and the piece of board with the community part had dropped off. It was named Community Baboon Sanctuary. The piece with community had fallen off and the baboons had an attitude. They said, well, this is a baboon sanctuary. He said, no, it's a community baboon sanctuary. Human beings, along with all living creatures, will be nourished and cherished. Not one versus the other. And so, for us, therefore, this journey today is a journey for us to move ahead together. I want to end by one last thing. On the 22nd of July, 1919, Samuel Alfred Haynes, coming back from World War I, and having seen the hypocrisy of the British colonialists and their local lackeys, challenged them, and it led to a riot throughout the whole of Belize. The governor took a boat in his harbor and sent an urgent request, send in white troops. But that would take X months to come. And the troops that were here had just come back from World War I, Mesopotamia, Italy, and all the battlefronts, including Flanders Field. So which white troops going to come here when they know the story? But Mr. Haynes was a man of vision, and he was the person who prevented the burning down of Belize town. Because he said you have to know what fight you must fight. You must fight the right fight. You don't burn your tongue and then the next morning you're looking at it. You must know the right fight. He said we went to fight the wrong fight. We began to correct it. We have come home. We must fight the right fight. The 22nd of July. Last year when the Prime Minister took the 9th Amendment to take back the public utilities that belong to the people of Belize, it was exactly on that date, the 92nd anniversary, 22nd of July, when I looked through my window in the Belmont, he was walking across from the National Assembly. I don't think that is an accident. And so we are proposing that this year, 22nd of July, and we propose this as citizens, not as any officials, that Belize begins to mark the rebirth of its nationalism, of its forward movement to progress that includes all its people, that it takes a human root, that it encourages, embraces, and develops each and every one that is in this place, and that it takes the God-given resources and makes the most wonderful use of them. And we are saying that from the 22nd of July, and I dream of this, if we were to do that, the little things that they are trying to challenge us with and pretend that it is impossible would fall into their right perspective. Because once the people become mobilized, there is no force on earth that can stop it. And so consequently, I want to end by saying this, that it is up to us. When that gentleman there went to his account and took $22,000, I am saying, oh my God. When Neil Galbert was meeting me to say, I have $3,000 and I'll put it in right away, he was upset with me because we were taking too long to do it. And he went and he did it. I think the message I want to leave is very simple. Let us all decide whether we're going to be some clowns or some serious people embracing the God-given spot that we have been given and finding the purpose for which we have been given it. And then I think that purpose will become clearer and clearer. It's a human purpose, that each and every one of us have a role to play in it, and that we are not destined to be some poor, forgotten, the road broke up, this no water, and all the craziness that we have become accustomed to, and we think it's normal. And every time we have a hurricane warning, and somebody on the radio tell me we are going back to normal, I say, don't rush back to normal, because they believe abnormal has become normal. Unemployment is abnormal for me. Livelihood is something we must now say, we work the land and work the God-given resources. Unemployment is unacceptable. Poverty is unacceptable, and we must now set out to do it. I want to end then by saying that an old English propagandist named Aldous Huxley, also called a writer, said, if the world had any ends, British Honduras would certainly be one of them. He said it is on the way from nowhere to nowhere else, and that nothing goes there. And he was saying that because he was spreading the rumor that the colonial folks were doing this great favor to this forgotten people living in some terrible place where nothing can truly work. And so he was saying, well, you know, we're really trying to help you, but you're really in bad shape. Well, I tell people Aldous Huxley was correct, because the world that he's talking about is ending this year. That world of exploitation and madness and craziness and poverty in the middle of wealth must end this year. And the Mayans said the same thing. It ends this year, the calendar. So I said, La Ruta Maya will merge into La Ruta Humana, and this year, Belizeans must be the people in the world who present the picture of a unified people engaged in prosperity. So I want to end by thanking you for listening, and I want to urge each and every person that this is not a hypothetical exercise. I end by asking each of us to do the research that we need to do, because we need to get the story, not what we make up, but to get the facts, and then to do the interpretation and to bring it into the 21st century in its modern manifestation. Thank you so much.